City of Hot Springs anti-discrimination policy and for other purposes. City Attorney Brian Albright.
I'll take this. Members of the board, as you know, Act 137 of 2015 was passed by the State of Arkansas 90th General Assembly this past session, and that will go into effect July 22nd of this year. The act provides in part that a county, municipality, or other political subdivision of the state shall not adopt or enforce any ordinance, resolution, rule, or policy that creates a protected classification or prohibits discrimination on a basis not contained in state law. Recently, last week, April 21st, the City of Little Rock passed an ordinance regarding the city's anti-discrimination policies, and Becca Clark, City Director, District 3, is sponsoring this ordinance, which is essentially a verbatim version of the Little Rock ordinance. This proposed ordinance addresses 3 areas of discrimination. The first of which is that the City of Hot Springs itself will not discriminate against vendors because of race, color, creed, religion, sex, national origin, age, disability, marital status, sexual orientation, gender identity, genetic information, political opinions, or affiliation of the vendor's owners. The second area is that the employees of the City of Hot Springs, in providing services to the public, will also not discriminate based upon those issues. Section 3 states that any vendor wanting to do business with the City of Hot Springs will also abide by this policy in such a way that all contracts providing goods and services to the City of Hot Springs shall contain a clause stating that the contracting party shall not discriminate on the basis, again, of race, sex, color, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. And the bid or proposals for request will so state. I have included in your packet for your consideration for next Tuesday the actual ordinance itself, a copy of the state law which is prompting this, as well as an opinion written by Little Rock City Attorney Tom Carpenter, which I feel like is a very comprehensive legal analysis of the issues that are raised by this particular proposed ordinance.
Any questions of Brian?
Yes, there are a few things I'd like to have included in the packet. I'd like to have a list of all the businesses that we currently contract with, and I would like to have each of them contacted with information regarding to the upcoming ordinance, so that they'll be informed of what this involves. And
Would it make a difference to you, Mayor, if this does not apply to existing contracts, only ones going forward?
well, just as we heard tonight, we've had contracts with some companies for 3 years, and we continue to contract with them year after year. And some contracts that we use now, we don't use until maybe 2 years from now. So let's do that for a 3-year period, and just list that and have those people contacted to be informed that this is what we're passing. Or
Everybody that we've entered into a contract with in the last 3 years?
Yeah.
Every one of them?
There'll be hundreds.
Yeah, it will.
I think that's overly burdensome. Can't we just make a public notice?
Yes.
Of course. But the contractors themselves sometimes aren't even in our city. We contract
hear
with
about
people
it, I'll
from
bet
other
you.
places.
Mayor, when we put out a request for bids, they have access to our communications systems. So I don't understand why we couldn't use that same concept and make sure that the people that you want notified are in fact notified.
Well, it's just like if we're changing a neighborhood code or ordinance, we contact all those houses on that street and let them know that this is being changed from residential to, we contact the people that it involves. And this will involve private businesses and contractors that we've used, for years. Maybe we're contracting with them now, but if we use them in 2 years from now, they're the ones that we use consistently. They should know what's happening. I feel like they should be informed.
They will know that during the bid process. This will all be included, right, Lynn?
Yeah, we can, I do want to address one thing that you're talking about on the notification. If a vendor signs up to receive bid packets or notices, like if they're interested in a certain specialty that we request our services for, they generally do sign up for email notices. So that's kind of like a blast email that goes, if there's a new, say we're going out for mowing bids, et cetera, that is a way that we can contact, I don't know that you can get them all, but you can get
A lot of them.
a vast majority of them.
Well, could you send that blast out for, this is coming up on Tuesday next week, and if this is what's written into the contract, that all contracts providing goods and services to the city of Hot Springs shall contain a clause, just so that they will have that, if you have that way of contacting them. I think they should know before it happens.
I don't want to speak for Dorothy's the purchasing department. That is one thing that is, if they've signed up for the alerts, they can, most of them do because they don't read the public, the notices on things of that nature, that generally like to get them electronically, so we can post this information as well. I mean, that's.
Just like you would post a job opportunity.
Or bid up, yeah.
Bid opportunity.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing in the packet, I'd like to have a list of objective evidence for the need included in the packet. People who have been discriminated against and the reason for the ordinance. If there is a reason for it other than we're defying what they did at the state capitol, if that's the reason for it, then we're just going against something that was passed there. But if there is a reason here in our city, I don't think we've ever discriminated against anyone in our HR, in any of our services. We never discriminated against any race, color, creed, gender, sexual identity. So I would like to have an objective evidence for the need of the ordinance included in the packet.
Mayor, there will be people here to speak next Tuesday to speak to that.
That have been fired or not hired by our
There'll be
city.
people who will be here who have this concern.
Well, many can answer. Has anyone ever been fired or not hired because of sexual identity?
She
It's
don't
not
know.
just about our employees, this is more than that.
Yes.
Brian, is it fair to say if the General Assembly had not passed Act 137, we wouldn't be having a discussion tonight?
I'm not the sponsor of this piece of legislation, so.
I think
I believe that's what brought the timeliness forward,
And-
yes.
and-
But people have been talking to me about this ever since I got elected.
And there
It's
is,
not new.
there is a window here because the state act did not contain an emergency clause. So therefore, 90 days from the sunny day, which you've already pointed out is July 22nd. So if the city were not to act within the period of time, and we're not going to put an emergency on this, I assume, yeah, it's not, that if you waited too close within 30 days of that July 22nd deadline, that we probably could pass something that would then run afoul of state law.
Unless you had, in fact, had an emergency clause.
Yeah.
Unless you had an emergency clause.
Which this is not an emergency.
Correct.
And one other, is it fair to say that really the first whereas of this ordinance really is the city's current policy?
Sections 1, 2, and 3 of the body of the ordinance itself does not deal with the employee manual. The employee handbook deals with that on its own.
Well, I would think that our handbook probably says what that first whereas says.
That's right.
That's what it's in there.
It's already there.
Okay.
So I'm questioning the need for an ordinance. It's just like usually there is a need for us to make a law or a rule, and that's why we like the objective evidence included in the packet for the need of this evidence, other than that the state passed this law that hasn't gone into effect yet.
I think I have the right to bring an ordinance to be considered by the board.
Right, I didn't say you couldn't, I said I'd like to have that in the packet.
Well, who's
I've
going to
included everything in the packet.
Is this discussion really getting into a discussion of the issue itself?
I'm just
Proper.
requesting
Let me-
certain things
please.
in the packet.
Please let me finish.
Yeah.
Isn't this an issue that should properly be discussed and debated at the board meeting? If there are requests for more information, rather than an individual board member, but, I mean, if the board wishes to receive additional information, for example, proof as to why this is needed, or a list of vendors that it would apply to, then that should be the will of the board, not one individual member of the board. I mean, just like we try to do with everything else. Sometimes we
Well,
don't do that, but we
The
try.
thing is, and let me explain right
Let me
there.
finish, please.
Okay.
Okay? So I'm proposing that this discussion, we make the decision of whether this is on the agenda or not. And that's it. And if we want to debate it, we do it at the board meeting.
Correct, thank you.
That is not correct, because time after time in this room, we have requested information in a packet that comes out to us to be published online this week. So if it's not requested tonight, and I have, just like you have the right to request information in the packet, that happens almost weekly. Would you please include this in the packet? You've done it,
Okay.
and I've done it too. And so there is no rule that says everyone has to agree on the information that we request to be in a packet. So I'm requesting this to be in the packet that will be online for our city residents to see when they look up the upcoming agenda. And the other thing I would like to have included in the packet is a definition of sexual orientation and gender identity. I would like to have that defined clearly so that we know that it's not just some, whoever has a definition. I would like to have it defined. There is evidence of a lot of other places that have gone through the same thing, and they need to have it defined because according to some printouts, there are 21 definitions of sexual orientation. So we need to know what we're passing, and we need to be clear on what we're passing, so that it doesn't include things that maybe we don't want to pass, okay? It says sexual orientation is a term without clinical or legal definition. No resolution or draft law should be considered by any government unless it contains a clear definition of this term. So I think we would have consequences that we're not looking for if we're not very clear on what we're passing. It's not just something, wow, we're in contrast to what the state does. We need to know what we're passing in our city. And the other thing is, what are the effect on private business? That's for discussion later. That's why I wanted the people notified before time, the effects that we have on private business. And the other one. And these should not be hard to be. I noticed that Annie Sheehan mentioned to me on the way out last week this economic development. So also I would like for the information to be disclosed to our city on the packet, equivalent to Eureka Springs and what that has created as their economic development. That could be with tax information from their city, how the tax, we can find that out very easily and see what's their growth and development has been since they have chosen to make ordinances rules. There are they've had it longer than anyone else.
Your ordinance has nothing to do with our ordinance, it's completely different. And it's being voted on, it's a referendum on it anyway. There's no history, yours hasn't gone into effect or been implemented.
What you just said just called something to mind related to this, and the fact this state legislation, the Attorney General now approved a ballot title where they're attempting to have a referendum on this act in the next general election. And since there will be a referendum, and this is for council, if there's a referendum pending, does that put the law in abeyance?
No.
All right, not until after the referendum election is held. Okay. One final question for the sponsor. I would assume that you would entertain the thought of putting this off 2 weeks to allow more, I anticipate a lot of discussion in the community about that, and based on those contacts I'm receiving so far. So.
A week is a lot of time, a lot of people are already discussing this.
Okay, well, I just would tell you that I've already had,
Let's do this.
in my young career of service on this board, this is the most contact I've had. And I'm not saying those are a large number of contacts. Actually, I've had very few contacts, but on this issue, I would estimate between now and next Tuesday that number will go up.
Well, actually, our policy is that all ordinances must be read fully and distinctly 3 times, unless we suspend the rules and read by title only. And we're so accustomed to suspending the rules and read by title only on general things like contracts with gravel and, material and stuff. We're so used to doing different things like suspending the rules, but actually our ordinances should be, especially when they're this far reaching into so many private businesses and enterprises, that we should read it fully and distinctly 3 times. I highly recommend that we do, to give people time, especially the vendors, time to understand what they're dealing with.
If we were changing the rule effective immediately, that would be a different thing, but this is for future contracts. Any vendors will have plenty of notice if they want to do business with us.
I'm talking about the
Or
citizens too, and if we read it 3 times.
This doesn't impact citizens' private businesses, only if they want to do business with the city of Hot Springs.
I'm wondering what that's gonna do with our jail and where we're gonna put our prisoners or our inmates if the county does not agree.
The county.
The county is a vendor. I mean, they provide services to the city, and I'm very sure the quorum court will have a lot to say about not contracting with the city. They contract with the city in a lot of areas. So it's really a big deal, and I think we should have time to see the unintended consequences of making a rash decision.
I disagree.
Okay.
Is there any reason we cannot read it 3 times as it's instructed and not suspend?
Well, that issue comes up at every meeting, Mayor, on every item on the agenda that's important. It requires a waiver and vote of the rules, so I don't think you can ask them whether that's gonna happen now.
No, I'm just saying we should.
When the issue comes up, each and every time.
I don't have a problem with them reading it 3 times. We get to call as many meetings as we like. If it's the will of the board to have a meeting the next day, that's fine too. I mean, I don't want to get bogged down in parliamentary procedure, and I do want the public informed. I'm not sure that the necessity of trying to prove everything is a burden, because I'm assuming we're going to get plenty of testimony on this. But I'm in favor of fully disclosing it to the public and giving them time to deliberate and get their input, and we should have time to get it done if we're going to get it done before the implementation of state law. However, we have to do that.
I think a lot of people are already making plans to speak to this. There's already people working on this. So,
Yeah, I-
next week.
I've been getting
6 more
comments since the legislation. I've been getting calls and emails and asking if we're going to do this. Because it concerns we have a lot of business owners that are currently fit under this, and I've already heard from 2 of them.
I don't understand what you mean fit,
They're gay.
but how does that, do they contract with us? as a
Because
city?
the new law is considered discriminatory for them.
I need to have proof of that because there's non-discrimination. So I want to know that we're passing the
I
right
think this
law.
language is proof of it.
Contracting with the city, it's about HR.
No, it's about vendors.
Well, part of it is that we will not discriminate in hiring.
That's actually not part of this. That's already covered.
It's already in our meeting. With all due respect, a lot of this sounds like debate. If you want to debate it to its nth degree, but you gotta get it on the agenda in order to do that. So, do we put it on the agenda?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm gonna defer to the sponsor of the ordinance if she wants to run it next Tuesday, fine. And if somebody doesn't want to enact it in one reading, we come back again in, 2 weeks? 19th of May, and then the first week of June. If you can't get the votes, it just takes a majority to pass anything, and so, but not necessarily to suspend rules.
Yeah, and I think we owe it to the citizens and the businesses in our community to understand exactly what's going on. That's not asking too much.
Well, we need to hear this. We can't put the genie back in the bottle at this point, so I'm for hearing it.
So am I.
Have you had both sides, pro and con on the issue? I got 2 emails today, one pro, one con.
I bet I got those same emails.
I got the one con.
I'm
Or
sure
check
we're
pro.
gonna be facing a lot of communication between now.
And that doesn't include though telephone calls or personal contact
Yeah.
either, so.
I got 2 pros and one con.
And 2 TV stations.
It'll be an interesting meeting next
Yeah.
week, yes. It's be good.
What the
Come
rest
out
of it is
and
on
speak
the
about it.
consent agenda.
Okay.
Yeah,
Bill.
Can you get clarity on what needs to be in the packet on that item? We're still kind
Yes.
Oh,
The
okay.
packet,
I
yeah, we
wrote
have it.
I mean, I don't see how staff can approve or disapprove what the public hearing is going to yield. So
I didn't ask for that in the packet. Did you get what I asked for in the packet?
Yeah.
You got
So
it?
you wanted evidence.
Oh, just if there has been discrimination in our city, I'd like evidence of that.
Okay, well, I'm saying I don't know how I get that.
Yeah.
How do I get that?
Well, you can say we fired 3 people, or we didn't hire 4, or something like that.
We can find no record of any,
Counselor, are we putting ourselves at risk to admit that we have discriminated if we have that knowledge? I
Well,
mean, that's,
again, first of all, this ordinance has nothing to do with employment. That's already handled under our manual. This has to do with, how our employees deal with the public, how we deal with vendors, and how vendors deal with their employees in the way that they serve.
So employment violations would have nothing to do with this?
Not on our part, no.
But Bill, answering your question, we need to get the business list and use that blast technique to get the information out. And we can do that.
Especially the ones that are out of state and out of city, because they might see it on the newspaper, but the ones the vendors that, several were mentioned that are out of city.
Well, more often than not, in other states, they've already done this. We're sort of behind.